Carl, this previously quote-unquote planned Taiwan convo didn't pass the smell test. I'm no authority on China-Taiwan matter, but PEDJT is either oh God, yes, President-elect Donald J. Trump is either guilty of ignorance of U.S. laws and protocol regarding the issues, check, or knowingly usurping the actual POTUS of a similar authority in matters of foreign policy. I would if I understood that.
All of the above?
All of the above, but I didn't quite get the second part. Realizing this, the transition team spinners needed to paint it as part of some grand world shakeup plan. I think that's all true. Let me get to that story. I mean, there's a little bit of interesting background to this, which I'm sure that Donald Trump knows nothing about. And I don't even know, I don't think it's like the most trendy issue on the far right now. One of the ironies of this call to Taiwan is that in today's world, Taiwan is one of the most progressive countries in Asia. It has a center-left president who's a single woman, who supports marriage equality. It's moved in a more progressive direction. But of course, the founding of modern Taiwan, and Taiwan has a very complicated history. I mean, I think there are some native Taiwanese who would even consider sort of people from the mainland usurpers going back generations. It's a country that's been colonized by the Spanish, by the Dutch, and the Japanese. And modern Taiwan was created by basically when Chiang Kai-shek's army fled the mainland, when Mao's communists won. They took over Taiwan, and they created what they claimed was the sort of real and authentic and continuous Chinese republic. And so Taiwan was a very it was a good sort of dog whistle for the right in America because of obviously being anti-Mao. This is before even in the 70s when Nixon opened up China, but even moving, several decades onwards. And there's always been interesting symmetries, like, especially as Taiwan in some ways got a bit more progressive, there have been interest and also as a human rights issue, people don't want Taiwan to be sort of forcibly reabsorbed into mainland China, into the People's Republic of China. So there's some people on the left that have some sympathy for Taiwan. And then there were people on the right that always wanted to make sure, arms sales to Taiwan was always a sort of controversial issue. And now the sort of mainstream of American political life and economic life has obviously just moved so far towards the PRC because of the kind of unending economic opportunities of China and the reality that China now is, emerging, and in some ways the notion that we live in a G2 world, right? United States and China really being the only sort of even potential competitor in the same type of global status as the United States. So there is an interesting background to it. I have no doubt that Trump did not know all of that, but I also think it's very curious and interesting that Taiwan is one of the first places he called. Maybe he did actually think to himself, I campaigned against China. I was, complaining about the way they work, the way they manipulate currency, to beating us at trade. Maybe there was some thought to that, but he also called Pakistan and, kissed Nawaz Sharif practically on the mouth when it actually seemed during his campaign that one of the interest groups that he was most sort of sincere about courting were the Hindu far right, which would certainly indicate very close relationships with Narendra Modi and India and a skeptical look at Pakistan, to say the least. So I don't understand. It's confusing. But I will just sort of update a little bit on the situation now. And this was Beijing's response. The most important sort of part of this is that China basically is obviously incredibly upset that Taiwan would get this phone call. And here's sort of how it played out. I'll quote now from the New York Times. China warned President-elect Donald J. Trump on Monday that he's risking a confrontation over Taiwan, even as Mr. Trump broadened the dispute with a new message on Twitter challenging China's trade policies and military activities in the South China Sea. So basically, what they did, the Chinese, through the official newspaper of the People's Republic, which is the People's Daily, it's the official newspaper of the Chinese Communist Party, they put out a very strong statement in an editorial saying that Trump is risking confrontation through this conversation with Taiwan. But they also created an out for everybody by basically saying that the leadership of Taiwan had sort of tricked Trump into calling them. So it opened a space for everybody to kind of walk away from a diplomatic conflict. And so now I'm quoting from the People's Daily editorial. Creating troubles for the U.S., China-U.S. relationship and is creating trouble for the U.S. itself. And then basically Trump, instead of sort of taking the hint, got on Twitter and basically, and this is the New York Times said in their language, seemed to take umbrage at the idea that he needed China's approval to speak with Mrs. Tsai. That's the president of Taiwan. In posts on Twitter, he wrote, "Did China ask us if it was okay to devaluate their currency, making it harder for our companies to compete, heavily tax our products going into their country? The U.S. doesn't tax them, or build a massive military complex in the South China Sea? I don't think so." And then basically, so, it's gone on. And, that's where we are as of Monday. It's concerning. We're in a situation now where it relies on the sort of patience of the PRC. Now, I don't think they actually want to have a confrontation with the United States over Taiwan, but it's a very delicate balance because the United States has always sort of maintained good relations with Taiwan, but they've also not sort of outright defied the People's Republic like this in recent policy making. So we'll see.
Hey, it's Sam Seder. Why don't you subscribe to this channel? You can do so right over here. Subscribe.